Hello, good evening. Are you with me? Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, shall I begin?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, this week's Sedra's got a lot in it and a lot of lessons that we can learn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start off, first of all, the most interesting part is the very words at the beginning. Im Lovon Garti. You know, I lived with Lovon. So Rashi says, V'tayag mitzvah shomat. If you look at the word Garti, I lived, you turned it around to Taryag, which is 613, telling us that Yaakov was saying, I stayed with Lovon. I did not give up my Yiddishkeit. I still remember that Taryag mitzvah shomati. I kept the mitzvahs. He didn't keep Taryag mitzvahs, but I want to tell you, which is very, very interesting. There's many interpretations on this. He was trying to emphasize that he hadn't learned from the lies and the cheating that Lovin had did to him, changing his salaries and switching over his wife and everything. But I believe it's something to tell us. Im Lovin Garti, I stayed with Lovin. The Taryag mitzvah shomat, in every mitzvah I did as though it was the whole Torah. I kept him every single thing together. And then you go on, he meets up with his brother Esav. It's a pity. It's a pity that you can't see it, but in the Sefer Torah, in most of the Chomoshim, you will see it's written there on the verse chapter 33, verse 3. It's come here that it says, Vayorotz Esav likroso. Esav ran to meet him. Vayichabkehu, he embraced him. Vayipol al tzavorov, and he bent onto his neck. Vayishokehu, and he kissed him. Now, have a look and see it in the Chumash as well. It's got it in. There's a whole load of dots across the top of that word, and he kissed him. Many interpretations is that he kissed him, but was genuinely insincere. In other words, that he could have done without all this. He didn't even expect him to do anything. So let's go on. Oh, wait a second. Have I got on? Yeah, you could. Can you hear me? You could all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I can hear.
Oh, good. So the one interpretation I want to read to you, which is a scary one. It says there that Esav wanted to bite his neck, because you can imagine he was going to do some damage to him. Yaakov was scared. But what happened was HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a miracle that his neck became very hard and he couldn't do anything. I think he probably broke his teeth if he had a dentist then, but he didn't do anything. So the question I'm going to ask you is, why is it that if the Meforshim are saying that he wanted to bite him, why doesn't the Torah openly say he wanted to bite him? When you say he kissed him, he didn't. If he wants to bite him, biting and kissing are two different things. I want to tell you that I found a story, and this is a story which I think you'll all appreciate. It goes as follows, and I have to read this to you because it is a genuine, honest, sincere story which actually happened. After the Munich conference has ended on September the 30th, 1938, the English Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain signed the Munich Pact with German leader Adolf Hitler, Yamar Shemai. The pact acceded to Hitler's demands for secession of the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia in Germany. Chamberlain was excited. He returned to England and on the steps of Downing Street declared, "This morning," he said, "I had a talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler, and here is the paper which bears his signature as well as mine." Shouts of excitement erupted from the gathered crowd. To the cheering crowd, he read the statement. And this was what he wrote. "We, the German Führer and Chancellor, and the British Prime Minister, have had a further meeting today. and are agreed in recognizing that the question of Anglo-German relations is one of the first importance for our two countries and for Europe. We regard the agreement signed last night, the Anglo-German naval agreement, as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again. While cheers broke out, reiterating the last syllables of the Prime Minister's statement, Chamberlain continued, "We are resolved that the method of consultation shall be the method adopted to deal with any other questions that may concern our two countries, and we are determined to continue our efforts to remove possible sources of differences, and thus to contribute to assure the peace of Europe." He ended his short statement with the following words that would haunt him and his memory till this very day. "My good friends, for the second time in our history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany, bringing peace and honor. I believe it is peace for our time. Go home and get a nice quiet sleep." 11 months later, England was thrust into its bloodiest war with the partner that was to bring peace with honor. The Torah is telling us a very important message. That kiss, that handshake, has to be taken with dire caution, because ultimately there was a desire for Esau to bite Yaakov. He wasn't wanting peace, although he ends up in kissing him. You never know what his original intent was. This was the same thing, Yimach Shemau, which we had to suffer during the Second World War. You can never, ever underestimate what people do and why they do it. And the Torah wanted us to emphasize, he kissed him, and it could have, he wanted in fact to bite him, but it turned to a kiss because HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected us. One has to be careful when one is dealing with one's enemies. Now, I'm going to jump a bit because I want to take you through to a lesson that I learned this week. There's a lesson as follows. It goes in and it tells us the story. Do you all remember the story of Dinah and Shechem? Shechem lived there near the family, and he took Dinah and he assaulted her. And of course, what happened was the two sons of Yaakov were furious, Shimon and Levi. And it says there, Shimon and Levi, Shnei Bnei Yaakov. We know they were the two sons of Yaakov.
We get it mixed up. My gosh.
So what? Somebody's got the. Could somebody mute it, please?
I'm so sorry about this.
Could somebody mute their microphone?
Can you go back to the
It says there very clearly
I can't.
that they were the two sons of Yaakov. I know they were. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. We know them over and over again. What is the Torah telling us? Shnei Bnei Yaakov. So we go as follows.
Just to finish the last slide.
Sorry, there's another share going here.
No time for meditation is one of the important catches.
Has somebody got their microphone on?
Keeping the dark matter open, because of course, when you stop in the
Sorry.
Kundalini to come up again.
Has somebody got their microphone on, please? Could they switch it off?
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Trying, or is this happening by itself?
It says as follows. It emphasizes that they were the sons of Yaakov, but they were not acting like the sons of Yaakov. What does one expect from our children in order to be considered our good children? What would it be? If I would say to you, what do you expect from your children? And you know what some thoughts would probably be? Kaved es avicha v'es imecha. Honor your father and your mother. And probably honoring parents is to look after their needs. Perhaps they need, they're not well, they need to be looked after. But no, Rashi is revealing something completely different to us. You won't believe this. This is Rashi, not me. And I'm going to tell you, to be considered a son or a daughter, you have to go to your parents and take their advice. Do you hear that? You've got to go and ask their advice, not just to be nice to them and keep it up. If you want to do something, take their advice. They did not. Shimon and Levi did not ask their father. Should we go and attack them because of what they did to Dinah? So how do we know this? Where do we find this from? Where's the proof? The word b'nai comes from the Hebrew word bana, to build. Our children are our builders. They are the ones who are going to carry on from us. Do you know what it says in Enkel Akenu? Do you know what it says in Bameh Madlikim? Al tikra bonaich. Don't call them your children. Ela bonaich. Call them your builders. Our children will be the ones who will build what we started. That's kibbud av va'em. Carrying on, and I've mentioned this many times for you. This is the greatest thing that children can do for their parents, is if they show them a derech, you carry on. But I'm going to give you a different reason, what was going on here. I want to defend Shimon and Levi. After all, you'll come along and say, what right did they have to go and take a sword and to kill them all while they were Nebuch out? The answer is very simple in the words. And you have to be careful with words. Do you remember by Bilam, when Bilam went to God and said, can I go with these guys, the Moab? They want me to go. What did Kodesh Baruch Hu say? Lo selech imohem. You don't go with them. And he kept saying this to them, don't go with them. Then all of a sudden he said to Bilam, lech itom. Go with them. And he gets punished for it. 1 minute he says, don't go. The next he says, go. The answer is looking at the Hebrew. You have to look at the words. The word imohem means go with them with the same intention. You remember with Lot and Avraham, Vayelech Lot itom. Lot went with them. He didn't go with the same purpose. Avraham went because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them. He was going to go and build Klal Yisrael, build up Jewish people there. Why did Lot go? Because he knew he was going to inherit his uncle's property. So he went with him. It was a good investment. Different purposes, different reasons. When Bilam was told, don't go with them. You're not going to curse these Jewish people. But said, go with them. You go with them, but you go with my purpose. And when he went, it says, Vayelech im. Sorry, Bilam. He went. Bilam went. Im sorry, Bola. He went with them with the same intentions in order to curse the Jewish people. Let's get back here now. What had happened with the children of Shechem? Yaakov said to them, "You want to join us? You're very, very welcome. What do you have to do?" He says, "Himoel lochem kol zochor." I want you. You will circumcise yourselves. You hear the words? Circumcise yourselves if you want to be. What did they do? What did they do? They went and cut a bit of flesh off. They did a bris milah. Was that what Yaakov said to them? No. Yaakov said to them what we have to do today, which people don't understand. Bris milah is that the whole body is circumcised. The whole body is separated from all the avodah zarah, all the evil and worship, the idol worship, etc., which exists in the world, in order to give our whole body and our whole life over to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Do you realize? And this is something so beautiful. There's no reason given for bris milah, and yet I want to tell you, every part of our body, every part, could be done for good, or chas v'sholem for bad. I could look at something, avodah zarah, with my eyes. I could stop by closing them. My mouth stops lashon hara. I've got lips. I don't smell something I don't want. I don't want to listen to lashon hara. I've got bris milah is to tell us that every single part of your body has there to be used but not abused. This is what happened here. But the Shechem did not fulfill the contract that was set to them, and they went, and sadly, what did they do? They just decided that they were not interested, and therefore, what do you call them? Shechem was put to death by Shimon and Levi. And that's why it says there that they felt that this was their responsibility, because they did not keep to their contract. They broke it, so they decided to punish them. Now let's go back again. Why does it keep saying and referring to them as Bnei Yaakov, the sons of Yaakov? I told you, children are builders. I want you to understand here, by Noach, do you remember Noach was born? Vayoyled Bain. It says by Lemech, Vayoyled Bain. And he had a son. You know, it was a son. It was Noach. But Bain is to emphasize here. Noach's job, what was his job going to be after the flood? He was going to rebuild the world. Bona, he was a builder. He built the world again on the foundations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the opportunity to rebuild the world. Bona, he was a builder. That's what it was. And in Devarim it says, Boni matem Hashem Elokeichem. You are Bonim, you are builders for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Do you know, this is Kibbut Over Aim. I've emphasized this to you before. The one in the front, Yichus, is the one in the front, not the hundreds behind us. It's not the parents, the grandparents. The one in the front is the Yichus. He's the builder. He's the one who builds up the whole of the family unit. And if he keeps the Torah, then that one goes and makes all the zeros into millions. You understand where we're coming from now? So here the Torah is coming to emphasize so beautiful and so important here that is coming to tell us that we have to, if you want to keep it over aim, you have to be builders. And I don't mean go out and build, you know, what I'm saying is build what your parents have started off. You know, you ever heard the expression, I want you to carry on where I left off? That's basically keep it over aim. Carrying on for where our parents leave off, keeping up the reputation, keeping going what they have established. Let's now look forward, let's look further now, and we will see what we mean by building, by something which is permanent as opposed to something which is temporary. Do you remember when the Jewish people, there were two tribes, 2.5 tribes. It was Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. They had so many sheep. Reuven, Gad, and Manasseh, half of Manasseh, had so many sheep. They went to Moshe and said to Moshe, look, do you mind? We don't want to go with you. We want to stay here because it's got lovely green grass. We've got plenty of grass here for our sheep. So Moshe made a contact with them. They would go out and fight. So they said, look, we will build sheds for our cattle and homes for our family. And Moshe went wrong. He went berserk. He said, first and foremost, you'll build home for your family, and then you will build cattle, sheep, pens, etc. for your cattle. This week, we see the exact opposite. What does it say here? It says here as follows, and I'll quote the verse here. V'Yaakov nosa Sukkoso. Yaakov traveled to this place which was eventually called Sukkos. Vayiven lo bayis, and he built a house. Ulemikneu osa Sukkos. Here we get it, the source. And for his cattle, he built temporary accommodation. Koroshema mokam Sukkos. And therefore he called the whole place Sukkos. Now let me ask you something. Would you, if you build a little pen for your dog or your cat, would you call your house a cat house or something? I mean, so what is Yaakov teaching us here? It's such an unbelievable thing. Now, you may have heard the story, you may not have heard the story, but there is a most beautiful parable, a beautiful story, which, again, I've been doing a lot of research on this, and I've been finding so much beautiful stuff. By the Sedra of this week's Sedra, we're introduced to a man called Reb Elia Lapian. Many of you may have heard of him. Reb Elia Lapian had a sheep. I mean, so he had a yeshiva sheep. He had a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, okay? And he said the following. In his yeshiva, he said he was an amazing he said, when he built when Yaakov built all these houses and everything, it was an amazing thing what he did in the desert. So it was lovely, it was built, but why does it matter how it looked or what he called it? So we've got to understand why he did it, why he called it Sukkos, and why he wanted it to look good. In Yeshiva's Kfar Hasidim, it was in the north of Eretz Yisrael, there was a yeshiva, and there was a very famous rabbi called Rabbi Plancey. In his yeshiva, in the basement, this is where they kept the flour, the pasta, and all the other dry goods. But there was a problem, because this has attracted those seeking the physical nourishment. But what did it do? It started getting infested with rodents. If you put a dry shit, if you've got a downstairs cellar, you've got to be so careful what you put in it, because mice come and all that sort of come. So it became infested. And the problem was that the food was being eaten up, and it became a hazard. What did the boys do, the students do? They went around the city and they brought a stray cat in. And then the cat they put into the cat would play. It would play in the yard, and every evening they would bring it into the basement where it would earn its keep. All right? So it was wonderful. Within a few weeks, there wasn't a mouse to be seen. Once a cat moves in, the mice go out. Not a cat, not a thing. Nothing was there. But the boys, unfortunately, lapsed in their commitment to the welfare of the cat. One evening, it said, the cat started scratching on the window. And if Elias saw this, he says, he was puzzled. What's the cat doing there? It looked dreadful. It looked hungry, undernourished. It was terrible. So one of the students explained the problem about the mice and how they had solved it. He says, are there still mice? He said, no. He said, the mice have gone. He's cleared the mice up altogether. So he said, and what about the cat? He said, well, the cat was the one responsible for getting rid of the mice. So since there are no mice, what's he been eating? Asked the rebellion. They said, well, we don't know. We don't know. Ah, he says, you've been lax in your responsibility and your gratitude. So do you know what he did? And by the way, if you want to know, there's a book by the Art Scroll called Rabbi Plancey and his life story. One of the Bochrim took a camera, took a photograph of Rabbi Plancey, a great man, an elderly man, bowing down with a bottle of milk and a saucer, feeding the cat. He said, the cat has to be fed. So the picture is there, this white bearded man and a cat, and thousands of people have seen this. So one of the Sephardic rabbis said the following, called the Orach Chaim. He says the revolution, an explanation is very simple. Yaakov did something unprecedented. He'd be spending about 1.5 years in an unsheltered terrain. So he built the sanctuary for the animals. But Yaakov was proud of building these animal huts. And any father would have done a labor of love, but he would have enjoyed for the family. But no, Yaakov didn't call the village after the houses he bought. Yaakov was teaching us sukkos. He gave the place to teach us as well that even animals have to be looked after. We have to show our hakoras hatov, our appreciation. Do you see what Yaakov is teaching us in this week's Sedra? It's scary. It's very, very scary, this. That Yaakov Avinu is teaching us everything that goes within this week's Sedra. Let's look a little bit further now. We've got now, so you've seen, and by the way, when you look at the end of the Sedra, when we get to it, by the book of Vayichi, when Yaakov blesses his children, he gives Shimon and Levi, who the men of the sword, he gives them in Tatnarai. He really gives them a Mishaberach for having done it, for not having asked his advice on this. He would never have killed them. So you're learning here the importance of life, the importance even of animal life, which is unbelievable. So here we go on and understand here. Go back again. Why was Esav so angry with Yaakov? Why was he so annoyed with him? And why was Yaakov afraid? And by the way, this week Sedra, there's a beautiful introduction here where Yaakov Avinu has a battle with an angel. Who's the angel? It's the Sarshal Esav. It's the angel of Esav. Now, I've told you this before, that every single person has got a malach upstairs protecting him. Some are good, some are nicht so good. You remember I told you the story about every time you do a mitzvah that you create another angel for yourself? Do you remember? And then the poor man was there, he was inheriting to go downstairs rather than upstairs. Oh, I saw a beautiful story you will appreciate. There was a very lovely man, he died. Unfortunately, he was a bit of a cheverman, and he went on the lift to go upstairs. And the angel met him. He said, look, he said, I'm giving you a choice. Do you want to go to Gan Eden or you want to go to Gehenna? Listen to this story. He said, well, I'd like to find out what's going on. So he said, all right. He said he took him, first of all, downstairs. Oh, Gan Eden was unbelievable. Parties, music, everything you think of. The food was just unbelievable. Then they go upstairs to Gan Eden. There is as well, beautiful, but not so lavish. Not so bad, but it's also lovely. So he comes back. He said, no, he said, have you made up your choice? He said, yeah, I want to go downstairs. It looks as though to me, it's absolutely fabulous. So they send him down. And when he gets down there, oi, is it bleak? Is it terrible? It's all punishment. It's everything. So he called the angel. He said to the angel, what's going on here? When I came down here, he said, everything was absolutely fabulous. He said they were canvassing. They wanted to make sure you'd want to come there. This is not the real thing. So they tricked you into this. But you know, it was very interesting. Was he went, the other one went down and he saw everybody was so thin, terrible. They were absolutely looking as though they had never eaten anything in Gehenna. Then he went up to Gan Eden. He said he saw them all so fat and so healthy. So he said, what's the difference? He said, didn't you look and see? He said, go back and look again. He went back and he saw, and first of all, he went to Gan Eden. He said, there, he said, there were spoons, but massive spoons. He said, everybody was feeding the other one. They weren't, in Gehenna, they were all trying to feed themselves, selfish, and nobody could get the big spoon into their mouth. That's the difference between Gan Eden and Gehenna. In Gan Eden, everybody looks after everybody else. In Gehenna, unfortunately, nobody looks after anybody but themselves. And that isn't good. It's a lesson we should all be able to learn. Now, Yaakov Avinu was rather worried. But in this week's Sedra, it talks about the battle between Yaakov and the Sashal Esav, the evil angel of Esav. And what happens? The angel hits him, and Yaakov gets, unfortunately, a limp. By the way, the sun in the morning cures him, and he's cured there. But Yaakov asks him, what is your name? He said, what is your name? He keeps asking him, what is your name? Doesn't tell you, does it? Have a look. You know the story about the man who went to the president of America? He says, do you know, he says, well, then China, what they've got? He said, massive buildings. He said, yeah. He said, do you know, he said, what they've got there? The industries, oh, unbelievable. He says, how long is a Chinaman? He said, I don't know. How long is a Chinaman? He said, I don't know. He said, how long is a Chinaman? He keeps asking him, how long, until he realizes how long was his name? How long was the name of the Chinaman? This is what the Al-Malach was saying. What is your name? What is your name was his name. You understand? He wasn't giving him his name, although Yisrael Yaakov became Yisrael. But it's interesting. We get a halacha from this week's Sedra. You know what the halacha is? The Git Hanosha. The sinews, you know, you have to have it porged. The hindquarters have to be porged. But you know, it's only mentioned here. And I found this in halacha. It's only mentioned here because it was given to us on Har Sinai. Not then. It was only mentioned now because it was an appropriate place to actually mention it. But there's another story which goes with unnoticed. How did Yaakov come to the Malach? Because he went back over the water, do you remember? To pick up the small vessels that were left behind by his children. Yaakov was teaching us a lesson there as well. Even the little things that belong to his children were important. These aren't my interpretation. He was trying to emphasize HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes important absolutely every single thing. How did he prepare? He said he had to fight this guardian angel. He says this was a dreadful thing. He said, the question is, why was Yaakov chosen? Did Yitzchak have a sultan to fight him? Did Avram have a Satan to fight him? Neither of them had a Satan to find him. So what was going on here? Because it's an interesting thing. Avram was the pillar of Chesed. Okay? Yitzchak was the pillar of Avodah. Now listen to this. Yaakov was Torah. The Satan does not believe in having fights. A nation is not founded on kindness or on prayer. How does a nation get built? A nation gets built on Torah. You could be as kind as you like, but that won't build a nation. There's no foundations for it. Avodah, tefillah, prayer, that brings a Kodesh Baruch Hu into the world. That is what we've got to understand here. Listen to this. The Satan wanted to destroy Yaakov because Yaakov sadly believed in Torah. Yaakov believed in emes. Yaakov believed in truth. You could have chesed, but it doesn't mean anything. I think I told you this. Do you remember? Zochati es brisi Yaakov, v'af es brisi Yitzchak, v'af es brisi Yaakov, Avram eska v'ha'oretz eska. It goes backwards. It goes Yaakov, it goes Yitzchak, it goes Avraham, and then land. What's going on here? Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu knows that if we only had Torah in the world, Mashiach would be here. He said, look, I'm waiting for Mashiach. I want it from Torah, like he said here. That's where the battle is. The battle is with the Satan on Torah. How often do we see people are sitting learning? Now, you're learning here tonight. I guarantee you there are lots of things you'd love to do. I know people are talking to me tonight about The Crown or some film that's been done in Borewood where I live. Oh, they're going Meshiga there. They want to watch all the films, television, etc. But what about Torah? And I've told you this, that if you utilize your time for Torah, then you get the reward, the schar, for eating, for working, for sleeping. Torah is the foundation on which Mashiach will come and which the building. Sadly, that's where the Satan keeps coming along and keeps telling us. You know, there's a notice in one of us saw it here where there's got a notice if a Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't answer your telephone, perhaps you should just talk to him directly. You know, because we come into shul, the first thing they do with the phones, it's crazy. With Yitzchak, that was avodah. He didn't have to fight. The Satan didn't have to fight it. You could do as well. You know something? I've just come from a meeting just now from the Samaritans. As the mayor, I'm now the mayor again. I've got my chains here, and I was listening. People are delighted to volunteer. It gives them something to do. Ask them to sit and learn and to study. Go to a lecture. You'll find it's rather different. Volunteer for food. You know, there's a lot of problems at the moment with the pandemic. So people are collecting. Chesed is unbelievable what's going on. But that won't save the world. There's just a monetary thing down there. We've got to sit down. I've got to get the foundation as to why we're doing it. We're doing it, you know something. I've got to be very careful what I'm saying here. When people do a lot of chesed today and a lot of avodah today, downing, it's a personal thing. They're doing it for themselves to get whatever it is they're going to get from. They get a lot of pleasure from it. If only they would realize, you know, the pleasure you will get from learning and from studying and from Torah. And that's why, if you like, the Satan came along and attacked Yaakov Avinu. He had to attack him there because he knew that this is what was happening. So what was as follows? The gematria of Yisrael, Yaakov, is 182, plus Satan is 359, which equals Yisrael 541. So you've got the gematria of Yaakov 182. The gematria means the number, the numerical value of the word. The numerical value of the word Yaakov 182, Satan 359, a total 541, and Yaakov would overcome the Satan. That's what it was saying to us. Now let's look at this name. Yaakov had his name changed to Yisrael. Okay? I want to tell you something. You're allowed to call Yaakov Yisrael, and you can call Yisrael Yaakov. But once Avraham became Avraham, you can't change his name. He's no longer Avram. And why? I'll tell you. Let's look at this name Yisrael. What does Yisrael stand for? The beautiful. What does the Yud stand for? The Yud is Yaakov. The next letter, Yisrael, Sin, is Sorah. The Reish is Rivka and Rochel. The Aleph is Avraham. And the Lamed is Leah. The four mothers and the three forefathers. That is Yisrael. Now let's take it further. Avraham is Aleph, Beis, Reish, Hey, Mem. 5 letters, correct? Yitzchak is 4 letters, is 9. And Yaakov is 4 letters, is how many? Is 13. Please remember that number. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah is 13 letters. Now, what's 13? The Hebrew word echad is the gematria of 13. Aleph is 1, Ches is 9, 8 plus 1 is 9, Daled is 4, is 13. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are one unit. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah are one unit. You put them together, the mothers and the fathers, you've got how many? 26. 26 is the name of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yud K Vav K. Yud is 10. Hey is 5 is 15. Vav is 6 is 21. And Hey is 6 at the end is 26. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah represented a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Let's take it further. All right? Ish, a man, is Aleph, Yud, Shin. A woman is Aleph, Shin, Hey. If we take away the Yud and the Shin, which is God's name, from those 2 words, you're left with Aish. There's fire. Put God into the name of male and female, you've got a Shalom Bayis. You've got a home. You've got an Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You've got a Yisrael. The whole of of us and the Amos together. Do you see why he got that name? Not just Stam and Welt, a name. But always remember that. Whenever you talk about Yisrael, you're talking about the Ovas and the Imohas, the patriarchs and the matriarchs. 13, 13, 26, Yud-K, Vav-K. That's what it's all about. That's what the Torah is coming to tell us. Every single word, every single letter is so, so important. People come along and they're trying, and I'm suffering from this at the moment, to try and tell me the Torah is antiquated. We're living in the 21st century. Why do we use the word Hayom? I give it to you today because the Torah is as applicable today. I said the following to them. It says in the Torah, you see the ass of your enemy, which is falling under his burden. Go and help him. Now, what's that got to do to us today? We don't have these asses or donkeys on the street today. But you drive a car. And if you see, the Torah is telling us, the Chachamim are telling us, if you see somebody's car, even somebody you don't like, stop. Help them. If they've got a problem, it's a mitzvah. Kodesh Baruch Hu wants you to do. That's what the Torah is telling us. When you go ayin tachas ayin, an eye for an eye, what does it mean? Very simple. An eye for an eye means compensation. Make sure that you look after somebody. The Torah is so, so applicable to the 21st century. And tragedy, we try so hard. So we don't fight the Satan. We have the Satan every single day fighting us. They're always telling us, you look, you know, how often do you see people looking at something which they shouldn't eat? It's only a little thing. Or Shabbos, it doesn't matter, you know, because I'm not doing, what much am I doing? It's not so difficult. Please understand, fight the Satan. That's what it's all about. And also be careful. Be careful we're not taken in by people come along. How do you think all these missionaries are coming? I said this to you last week, that the stones were trying to come to your head, take you away from Yiddishkeit. The missionaries are coming in, knocking on your door. Oh, I'd love to tell you the story. You know the good news. It's always the good news. There is no good news unless we go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I want to tell you, it's so, so important. We're coming towards Hanukkah. We've got to prepare for Hanukkah. What we're doing, we're buying oil. We're getting our menorah cleaned. I just cleaned up in my menorah, taking it out of the cover, cleaning it. But that's the Pasume Nisa. But you know what's more? There was a shaila asked. The question was asked. You come along to the rabbi. He said, Rabbi, he said, we've only got enough oil. either to light the Shabbos candles or to light the menorah. What should I light? Could anybody give me an answer, please? Go on, put your microphone and tell me an answer. Do you like the Shabbos candles or do you like the menorah? You've only got enough oil for one. Ellie.
Oh, that's difficult. You like the Shabbos candles or the menorah?
Well, what would you like? Shabbos candles or the menorah?
I like them both, of course.
You can't. You've only got enough oil.
No, okay.
Choose.
The Shabbos candle.
You're 100% correct. You know why? Because the Shabbos candles represents Shalom Bayis. The Pasume Nisa, the miracle can be spread again tomorrow. You'll light again tomorrow. But Shabbos has got Menucha. You've got to light the candles for Shabbos. That's the halacha. Shabbos comes before Hanukkah. And by the way, when it comes to lighting the candles, the Hanukkah candles come first because it's already Shabbos if you light them. But the Shabbos candles, Shalom Bayis. Do you hear that? This is what's coming in here. Shalom Bayis is binyan, is building the future. So that's my message for you this week. It's a beautiful Sedra. It says, you know, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. He had to send angels before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because, you know, unfortunately, Yaakov would recognize them. Yosef had to see the angels, otherwise he would never have known what it was. So we got the Sedra this week. We've got the story of Dinah. We've got the story of being careful, the story of being able to show that your whole life is Avodas Hashem, and to know that when it comes to learning, you're going to find the Yetzer Hara is going to try. Stop your learning. Keep learning. Look after yourself. And I look forward to seeing you again in Yetzer Hashem. And I'll tell you, my daughter taught me a lesson. My daughter married a Danish young man, and she went to live in Denmark. And the very first thing she did was learn Danish. She went to university to learn Danish. I said to her, darling, why have you learned Danish? She says, I'm not going to have my mother-in-law tell me, talk behind my back. I've got to understand what she's saying, so I know what she's saying about me. I heard today the rabbi gave the shiur on Hilchos Shabbos. I started to understand a little bit. I think I'm going to go and learn Dutch, and I'll see if I could be able to join in as well. But have a lovely, lovely Shabbos. Be well, and if you get the injection, take it, because it's worth it. I'm going to have it. And in Yetzer Hashem, we should be zoiche to have a gesunte Shabbos, a lovely Shabbos, and in Yetzer Hashem, look forward. The hachana, the preparation for Hanukkah should be Pasume Nisa, understanding. And by the way, I want to tell you, in Ala Nisim, look at it. Be very careful, because Ala Nisim is the Yidden fighting Yidden. I'll go through that with you when we do the Hanukkah. It's a scary subject. But I wish you all a good Shabbos. Keep well, and be careful, and be safe. God bless. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Bye.
That's amazing, really.
It's a pleasure. Speak to you soon. What somebody said. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Chanukah Sameach. We'll get in touch. I'm almost certain I'm going to give you a shiur before Chanukah, so don't worry. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. God bless.
Nice.
Bye, Tatjana.
Het ging ook overkant.
Yeah. Oh. Look at that. Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good Shabbos, Tatjana.
Mhm.